Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Beauty Connective podcast, where beauty professionals connect, grow, and get real. I'm your host, Kylie, a nail tech educator and founder of the Beauty Connective. Let's dive into this week's episode. Today, I'm so excited to sit down with Jaynee Meyer, a nail tech and educator leading the industry in nail tech finances. If you're a nail tech who's ever been afraid of handling your own business finances, this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. Jaynee, I'm so excited that you're here today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
I'm so excited to see you because you and I met at the nail tech retreat last year.
Yeah.
That was such a fun experience for me, like really such a game changer. And you specifically, like we chatted a lot there and I feel like we really connected and just like we're business women.
Well, it's crazy to see like how far we've both come really since then, but especially you. So I'm super proud of everything you're doing. This is awesome.
Thank you. No, same. And so I want to hear from you about like your journey through the nail world so far.
Yeah. So originally I did not plan on getting into nails, which I feel like everybody says, but we all end up here somehow. Basically I saw nails as a way to make a little bit of money during college. So it was like right after COVID, my nail lady had stopped doing nails. So I was kind of dabbling in it myself. And I had a friend that was kind of in the same situation. So we would send each other like nail art pictures back and forth. And we were so proud of them. It was like terrible nail art, but we were like so excited. And so she had told me like, I'm thinking about going to nail school. And I was like, I've kind of been thinking about that too. And so seriously on a whim, we just were like, let's sign up for nail school. We got like the last 2 spots in a summer class. I was working in education at the time, so I didn't work in the summer. So it was perfect. So
what were you doing in education?
So that's what I went to college for. So
okay, wait, I didn't even know that we
really?
had that in common too.
Yeah, so originally I was going to be an elementary teacher. So I went to school. I was in college at the time and I was working as a para in a middle school at the time. So that's honestly truly what I thought I was going to do. I have a big family background in education, so I just was like, yeah, that's what I need to do. And now here I am in education, just not in the way I thought. So yeah, jumping into nail school, I really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I was horrible at the beginning, I truly was, but I feel like I'm lucky in the sense of I had a positive nail school experience because unfortunately I don't think that's common anymore. But that to say, there's like a lot to learn, and 300 or 350 hours is just not enough. And so after nail school, yes, I had the basics of how to do nails, but afterwards I literally was like, now what? Like I had so many questions about like even just little things like, well, when do I buy product and where do I buy product? Like I had all the technical questions, especially on like the business aspect. I'm like, wait, do I have to pay taxes and do I need a business license? Like all those questions stressed me out, and I didn't want to just keep bugging the 2 people in the industry that I knew at the time. So jumping right out of nail school, I worked out of my mother-in-law's house in a studio, and I loved it. It was good, but I just saw it as, a way to make some cash. It was a schedule I could create for myself, but that being said, I had like no boundaries at the time either. I was still in college, still planning on going fully into education. I was newly married. I was a full-time athlete as well. And then I had like 5 million part-time jobs also. So doing nails, going on. Yeah, a lot going on. Doing nails was just like, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., any moment that I could, I wanted to. And because my schedule was so limited, I felt like almost bad for my clients, like that I owed it to them to like fit them in whenever I could. So it was rough for a little while. Like I just kind of worked a lot and kind of was burnt out a little bit from the get-go.
Totally. So, like the grind.
Yeah.
Totally hustling.
Was hustling. Yeah. And I didn't even really fully enjoy it even at that time. I just didn't have the mindset even to like realize what this career even meant. Again, it was still just like a side hustle, a hobby. We talk about that a lot in the industry of like, no, this is your actual job. Like you can actually make money. And I just didn't view it as that at the time. So.
Yeah. What made you take the jump from this like side hustle, extra money view of it to like a full-time?
Yeah.
boss woman job?
So again, I had a lot going on personally and just like in my life in general. And then at this time, my husband and I actually relocated to Kansas, where I knew nobody. And so I wasn't feeling very motivated to start a nail career there. I was used to the Utah nail scheme of like, you know, there's a lot of people here. We all kind of do the same thing. It was comfortable. And so going to a state where I knew nobody, I didn't know what the beauty industry looked like there. I was super nervous. So I got there again, was working in education and just, I don't know, thinking about doing nails. So I opened a little home salon, was doing a couple of clients. And then I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes while we lived there. And that was like a huge life moment of like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know. It just really changed my perspective on life in general. It was a super difficult time. Like we had just moved to Kansas. It was like a couple months in. So it was a really frustrating time. It was super isolating. And like, I just had a lot of questions again. So I felt like lost almost. And so it was actually my husband, shout out to him, to kind of push me to this point. He's like, you should open a salon. And I was like, no. Like I know those girls that own a salon, like it's a lot of work and they don't have time for anything else but like the salon that they owned. But the more I thought about it and the more I did my research and looked at people in the beauty industry that I respected, I realized there is a way that you can own a successful business and still prioritize things in your life. And that was kind of the bottom line for me. And unfortunately, in my career in education, I wasn't able to prioritize myself. And after getting diagnosed with diabetes, that was my number one, is I need to be able to take care of myself, my health, and then my family. That was all I wanted out of life, really. So when I realized that I actually could do that and it didn't have to be the way that I was making it be in nails, I opened a salon, and it was small. It was a super small scale. It was just a nail studio. I had 4 nail desks in there. And that was a really big pivotal moment for me of like, this is mine. Like before it was always just out of my house. So it didn't seem as, separate from my personal life. Again, it was just something that I did on top of it. But now this was like, I had to get up. I went to work at this establishment that I had licensed, I had prepared, I had done all this work for. So that was the mindset change for me, but I don't want it to have to come to that for everybody, to like have to have this, life-changing moment or where they're like so beaten down that that's when they come to the realization. I think for any nail tech in any scale, like you can make it what you want it.
I love it. I love the resilience of like having this crazy life experience that really kind of gives you some perspective and just kind of realizing like, oh, I can do this. And then like so empowering to create your own thing and be the owner of the thing and be running the thing. Like it's just so cool. I love that you did that in a place that you didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
What did that look like, gaining like awareness and clientele around your new business in a brand new place?
Totally. I definitely think I had to try harder at the beginning, obviously not knowing anybody. Fresh out of nail school, I would say majority of my clients were luckily friends and family. Like I was super blessed in that category of people wanted to support me. But coming to a new place, I had to learn to almost value myself a little bit more, where before it was like, oh, I had a friend or family, and then I felt almost guilty for like charging them for doing this thing. And now it was like, no, like this is the value that I bring, and if you want to be my client, great, I'd love to have you. And so learning to market myself in new ways, just really getting myself out of this comfort zone. And then I also learned, that's kind of where I jumped into education, and it started with educating my clients, because structured gel manicures, don't exist in other places. Sometimes it's a new technology, and if you live somewhere that's maybe a little bit behind the times, or just you don't have access to the education that we have here in Utah, we're super, super lucky. Out there, it was like really traditional, I guess, in the sense of people went to hair school and then also probably did nails a little bit, but didn't really invest themselves or dive deep. So I almost feel like I had the upper hand a little bit just because it was new, and people like new. It's exciting. And so fortunately, I had the best clients in Kansas. I love them all. I miss them so much because they took a chance, right? It was a new product, especially the ones that came to my home. Like that wasn't super common out there either. And so it's like a little sketch, right? Like I had one client tell me she she's like, I texted my best friend your address in case I stop replying in like 2 hours. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, it actually is a little bit sketchy.
Everyone has my location. They're watching.
Yeah. Yeah. So just the clients that took a chance, it really just spread like wildfire after that because of word of mouth and the experience that I was able to give them.
Incredible. That's so inspiring for people who are wanting to do the same thing. I feel like in Utah, it's one thing to own a nail business just because everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people know what structured gel is out here, and nail art is such a thing. But in other places, it's like you could really take it out there and grow it to be huge because it's like, it's hard not to fall in love with once you start getting your nails done that way. Totally. And the structured gel and the art and everything is so fun. So
my clients told me I could never move, and then I did, and so they're really mad at me now. But.
I know. What was that like to leave Kansas again?
Yeah, it was hard. It was the right thing to do, like, in our life, right? So again, you have to separate, like, professionally I would have stayed there forever, and I probably could have flourished and been totally content, and I was content for like the first time in my life, but personally, like, there was things that we needed to do otherwise. And now, like, you know, from an outside view, I'm realizing why and like how professionally I'm able to grow because of that. And I'm doing things that I wouldn't have done if I stayed in my little content bubble. You know, doing my clients, being a full-time nail tech was awesome, but it doesn't allow me to do the things that I'm doing now. So
yes, and let's transition to that. What was that jump like, or what made you decide to move into getting away from the nail desk and moving further into education? Yeah,
so I always have been passionate about education. Obviously, I went to school for it. I have always been a teacher, I would say, in some capacity. I used to coach for the sport that I participated in. And then
Which, by the way, so impressive. Like horse gymnastics? What do they call it?
It's called equestrian vaulting. You can look up Oak Hills Vaulting or USA Vaulting. That was the club that I was part of. So
crazy things that you can do. It's so wildly impressive.
Yeah, so I was a full-time athlete for 10 years. I was on the US equestrian team my last season, and then also coached throughout all of that, and coaching was my favorite part of the whole thing. I loved having students. I loved seeing their progression. So it only makes sense that I'm translating that now into my career. So in Kansas, I did do a little bit of educating. I was just kind of dabbling in that world. And I actually had the opportunity to kind of bring structured gel to the nail world there. And now it is a thing there, which is super awesome to see. The nail techs that were actually receptive to something new, you know? And so
very cool.
I was able to do some one-on-ones there. And then that's kind of when I jumped into finances and business. Because that was another pivotal moment that I kind of left out of, like, learning to not only separate like my life from my professional life, but also in the world of finances was the biggest mindset shift that happened for me. I mentioned that my husband played a big role in this whole process. And I guess if you're lucky enough to have a partner that you kind of lean on for those decisions, you tend to, because you don't know anything different. And so he was super supportive the whole process, opening the salon, both, you know, physically, mentally, financially, he was there. And I kind of hit this moment of, I need to separate the two. I need to have that separation of even just finances. And I'm almost embarrassed to say it took me so long to separate my personal from my professional finances, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later today. But once I did that, and not only had the mindset shift, but physically had the financial break of like, this is business money and this is my personal money, I noticed so many shifts in how I felt towards doing nails, how I felt towards owning a business, and like my marriage also. So the course that I have for finances is called You're the Boss Babe. And where it came from is kind of during this time, I had separated my financials, you know, so now it really was about a business decision. It wasn't like, hey honey, you know, I need to borrow $5,000 for nail polish. Like, they don't get super stoked when you have that conversation. Fortunately, I had a supportive, you know, spouse, but I know not everybody has that situation. And so once I separated it, I still would kind of naturally lean on my husband for those business decisions. Like, oh, I really want to take this class, or do I need this new, whatever it is. And he literally said to me one day, he's like, I don't know, babe, you're the boss. Like, he just kept saying, like, you're the boss. Like, I don't know. Why are you asking me? And I think that's a testament of how much faith he had in my business and my business running skills at the time, because he trusted that like financially, personally, we're going to be okay because of the business decisions I was going to be making. And so he wanted me, it's like he was pushing me to learn to like be my own boss. So that's where the biggest mindset shift happened of like, okay, I'm the boss. No one else can make these decisions, especially the financial ones, but me. So that's kind of where that came from. And that's what I try to instill in my students or other nail techs, especially the ones that take that You're the Boss Babe course, because I don't think we're taught that in nail school.
I love that story behind You're the Boss Babe, because I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's just like realizing that you're the one in control of this. Like you're the one making it happen. You're the one calling the shots. You're the one deciding where the money goes and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also like overwhelming, right? Like that's where a lot of us start out, is like overwhelmed that it is our own choice. And we are in the driver's seat, specifically with financials. That's a lot of pressure. Especially if you are the breadwinner in your household or you're trying to be, there's a lot of, pressure there. And so you have to almost change that mindset from pressure to like empowerment, to being empowered by that. And so that's where I felt the most success. Maybe it wasn't the most successful time of my career, whether it was or not, it doesn't matter. But that's when I felt like I really am the boss,
I'm the boss, babe.
Yep.
Let's talk about finances, because like you said, it is one of those things that's really overwhelming and scary at first. And I think it keeps a lot of beauty professionals from jumping into the industry or being independent, because they're just like, what about taxes? Or how do I have money for this? How do I finance it? What do I do? So let's talk just about like from the beginning, from starting like as a fresh nail tech wanting to be independent. What do they need to know about finances?
Yeah, I think you're right. It is a super overwhelming, I call it like the F word. When you say the F word, everyone runs away from you. They're like, finances, no, I don't want to talk about it. And a lot of us, whether it's personally or you own a business, think that ignorance is bliss. And a lot of us live like that. And maybe it is. Maybe you are totally fine not understanding. But again, that's where burnout comes from, and resentment towards running your business, because you feel some type of way towards your financial situation. So I would say just being aware from the beginning, whether your financial situation is not what you want it to be, or whether you just don't know. I think it's important that we do know. So I think especially for us independent nail techs, there's a lot that we have to keep track of. I could talk about taxes all day, but in a nutshell, I would say having some kind of method, and I don't really care what it is, that you can streamline your finances. So the biggest thing I talk about in my course is separating your personal from your professional life in terms of finances. So for me, I would say the number one thing that I preach all day long is getting a separate bank account. Again, something I'm embarrassed that I didn't do sooner because I just didn't know better. I mentioned I was newly married when I started doing nails, so I was also learning to deal with financials with a partner, which I think is very real to talk about, that no one really tells you how to learn to mesh that together.
And everyone does it differently. There's so many different ways that you can share
with
expenses and things. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way, but I still was in that like learning era of like, okay, how do we do this? And like, who's paying for what? All of that was super confusing. And then add a business on top of it, like even more confusing. So if you're in a similar situation, I would separate them from the beginning. And people are scared to separate because they think they're going to lose out on money, or maybe not make as much because it doesn't feel like that. And I have a couple of methods and strategies that I use to kind of bridge that gap. So when I say separate your finances, we want to streamline it so that we have the most accurate records, so that we can make the best judgments for our business. So in terms of tracking your income, it's really important to track every dollar that someone pays you, right? Whether you are giving a discount or whatever it might be, it just has to be accurate. So at the time I was using, like at the beginning, Squarespace and Venmo, which are great platforms. I still use similar ones, but I was not tracking them at all, right? Like it just was like, yeah, money was coming in and out, and it just was like what it was. So I think being really particular on how you track your income. So I recommend we keep track of this every month. Probably the biggest mistake I see business owners make in terms of taxes are waiting until the end of the year, and you see everyone posting, oh, I hate tax season. And I'm like, it shouldn't be a big deal if we're doing the things that we should as business owners every single month, right? So one of them is knowing how much money you make. And then the second one is knowing how much money you spend, and just being really honest with ourselves about the expenses that we are making for our business. And again, just having an accurate method of tracking that. So whether you use like a booking app, most of them have a built-in feature of like tracking your income and expenses. I started out with a good old piece of paper. I had like this book I bought for like $5 on Amazon that I could it had just lines that I would write my income every single day. But now I've kind of evolved, and I love spreadsheets. So I've created a spreadsheet specifically for nail techs to keep track of both income and expenses all in one place. And then it's actually something you could literally hand over to your tax professional at the end of the year. I just had a nail tech that I met who told me that her CPA was so proud of the spreadsheet, and he's like, yeah, use this every year. So that was like the best compliment. But
oh yeah.
yeah, basically the spreadsheet has an income tab. So it has a spot for you. You can keep track of your clients on there if you choose. So you could literally write like this date, this service, this is how much, this is how they paid me. And then it will auto add into like a summary page. So you can see all of those numbers together. And then each month also has an expenses page. So I think there's like 12 categories that are like the actual categories you need to keep track of for tax purposes. It comes straight from the Schedule C, which is what you file if you're familiar at all. So essentially this is just a way for you to kind of check all your boxes and make sure that you're keeping track of anything that you use for your business. And then again, it has one big summary page, which I love and is what I use to evaluate my business under kind of a closer eye of, okay, what's happening month to month, or why are my numbers fluctuating, or why are they not? So yeah, it's a great tool. I do sell it on my website. It's pretty inexpensive, and you can like copy it, use it year after year, because my goal is not to make a bunch of money on that. It's to help you learn what your financial situation is.
Literally making it so much easier.
Yeah.
Because tax season rolls around and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
What do I do? But if you've
Literally.
kept track of everything the whole time, then it makes it so easy. And there's so many tax write-offs.
So many that we just don't know about. And I think that was my biggest question in the beginning. Like, I had heard people say, oh, you need to keep track of your expenses. I'm like, what expenses? Like, yeah, I'm buying nail polish, but like there are so many more that I just had no idea. And so that's another reason for this spreadsheet is if you don't have a CPA or a tax professional that's willing to educate you, you can educate yourself via the spreadsheet. They're pretty self-explanatory categories. And you can just, add your expenses per month and it will translate over really nice.
I go into my financial spreadsheet every week.
Love that.
I'm in there weekly, like
Love it.
Just makes it easier so I don't have to go back and remember anything from even a few weeks ago. My memory doesn't work like
Oh
that.
yeah, especially like scrolling on Venmo, I'm like, why did I pay so and so? Like I have no idea. It really does go out your window. So I think for income, my personal method was every day, like but I used Gloss Genius, if anybody uses that app, they have I just checked out the client. So you like check them out and you put how much they paid you, obviously, and then they can generate reports for you. So that was really nice to track that as well. But yeah, I think weekly is even better. Like as much as you're willing to commit to it is what you're going to see the results out of it.
Do you recommend having a separate Venmo account for your business?
Yeah, this is kind of a controversial topic, and so we'll talk about it a little bit, but I actually have an aunt who is a tax professional, so I work closely with her, and I actually helped her with my first tax season this year, which was super awesome.
Huge.
So her advice, and I guess now my advice, is basically Venmo is just wanting us to pay a little bit more, right? Like they want us to pay the fee for transactional situations that we're using for our business, which is understandable, right? Like it's a service, but they also have a free version that works just as well. So personally, I've always used a personal Venmo, never had any issues. What I will say is legally, you're not crossing any boundaries as long as you're paying your taxes on that income, right? Now, if Venmo does come to you and say, hey, you're clearly using this for a business, we need you to have a business account, that's different. But but I would say it's not something to overly stress about. If personally you feel more comfortable and at ease to have a business account, that's great. But legally, they really can't do anything other than tell you, now you need to use a business account type thing. But the bottom line is that we're paying our taxes, which we all should do at the end of the year, right?
Pay your taxes.
Pay your taxes.
Yeah, no, that's good to know, because I have a separate Venmo business account. And for me, it's more just, it's like the same way you talk about separating your personal bank account from your business bank account. That's how it feels for me personally.
Yes.
But good to know that like it's not absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it gets really messy and everyone kind of freaked out. I know when that change first came, and I saw a bunch of people saying like, I'm not using Venmo anymore. And or like we could get into charging your clients that transaction fee. My personal take on that is it's your business, and that's kind of just something that comes a part of it. I don't know if you've ever been to like a restaurant or a store and they're like, oh, you're using card? Okay, it'll be an extra 3%. I'm like, what? Like, you're the business owner. That really kind of falls under you. Like, you're making me pay you, so that shouldn't be on me to pay that extra fee. So I would say it's the same with nails. If you do choose to use a business Venmo or other sites that have that fee, it's kind of up to you. Really, it's all up to you. But in my opinion, I think it's part of being a business owner, and that little fee should be built into your pricing and things like that. And on top of that, it really evens out. Like, it's not that much bigger of a deal, because now that's an expense that you can write off, right? So maybe you don't want to pay that fee, and then you end up just paying a little bit more taxes. Whatever it might be, I truly think it's going to even out in the end.
What helps you kind of determine what's worth spending business money on, what expenses to pay for, as far as, supplies and products, but also like education or extra things for the business?
Yeah. I think this all comes down to knowing your financial situation. Again, just having a really close eye on what's going on. So the fact that you are looking at your finances weekly tells me you have a pretty good idea of what you can and can't spend, right? And I think this goes for personal finances as well. But if we just understand our finances, we understand money in, money out, and that consistency, there's a greater chance, or I guess less of a chance for error in this moment. I would say for me personally, like when my goals were that I wanted to make the most amount of money possible, I had to have a hard conversation with myself and be like, okay, you can't buy every new color collection that comes out, right? Like, that's not necessary for my business. So I think I like to talk a lot about financial goals, because it's something I didn't have for a long time. My financial goals were to make money, right? That's all of our financial goals, but it becomes deeper than that, right? Like, do you have long-term goals for your business? What's important to you right now? So when I was at a time of building my clientele and really honing in on my skill, my financial priorities were classes, education. I wanted to take as much possible. I wanted to learn as much possible. So that's where I was prioritizing my money. Same with like at the same time, it was product exploration. I wanted to try a bunch of different products. So that's where I was spending my money. So you almost have to ask yourself what your financial goals are first. My advice to somebody that wants to make the most money possible as a small business owner in nails would be to spend the bare minimum, right? Not give your clients the bare minimum, but spend the bare minimum that you need to as a business owner. So we don't need all the nail art trends. We don't need all the new collections. And do that for a couple months till you have some financial footing, and then we can, reap the benefits of having all the extras.
So it can totally just depend on what your current goals are for your business, your personal life, and your professional life.
Totally. Yeah. I talk a lot about separating personal from professional, but really they are integrated, because what your personal goals are kind of impact your business. Because there's been times in my business where I pay myself the least amount possible because I'm putting so much back into my business, right? Like, I'm investing back into my business. We'll kind of jump into this as well, but like creating kind of a cushion for your business as well. Like, if you want a PTO, if you're having a baby and you need maternity leave, then that's where you need to prioritize your money. But if personally you need to make the most amount possible, then you have to also be okay with maybe your business not progressing as quickly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so it can just kind of like fluctuate.
Totally.
I wanted to talk a little bit about pricing. I feel like this is a big topic in the industry and how to price your services correctly. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, pricing is a hard one, and I feel like we all overthink it. Again, I think having a really clear idea of what's going on financially is going to help you in this. So for me, there's a couple numbers that I'd want you to know before you feel comfortable or feel some type of way towards the prices that you set. So for me, that number one is, do you know your cost per service? Meaning, do you know how much it's costing you every time a client is in your chair? And again, we can't do that if we're not tracking our income, if we're not tracking our expenses. These numbers are going to feel really scary. But if you're already keeping track of this, I have a couple formulas that I can literally hand you and be like, yeah, find these, and then that can kind of help you. So having that cost per service, I think really puts into perspective of, okay, if it's costing me $20 every time a client's sitting in my chair and I'm only charging $40, I'm making $20. That's like minimum wage, right? So just having those realizations with yourself. And then again, going back to your financial goals, like what's important for you at this time. And if it's important to you to build up financially in one way or the other, again, we can like adjust things a different way. So probably my other big one with cost per service, how I find that number is combining all of your expenses and dividing it by how many clients you do. So when I say all of your expenses, this is like rent. If you pay booth rent, this is all of your supplies and all the other categories that come within those tax write-offs. So it's not just like, well, I used a little bit of luminary and some polish. Like it's everything that you need to run a business. So I would say it's a pretty broad number that gives you that perspective. So after we've found our cost per service is when we can kind of look at our prices. And then I hear a lot of people say like, charge your worth, and we can get into that conversation, but I think it's more about the value that you're giving your clients. So is the value that they have to come back in 2 weeks because your nails only last 2 weeks? You have to like consider those things, right? So yeah, it's a little bit complex when we talk about pricing. I would say the final number that I would want you to know is what your average monthly expenses are. And I would want that average number to really stay pretty consistent for at least 3 months before we make any decisions. 3 months is kind of my time frame to do like an overall evaluation of your business, just because you can really tell in those 3 months, because things do fluctuate in our business, right? Like clients cancel, you get sick, you raise your prices, somebody doesn't tip you, or someone tips you a lot, right? Like there's a lot of fluctuation. So 3 months tells me, okay, I'm spending about the same amount of money to keep my business afloat. If 1 month you're like, whoa, I had $1,000 more in expenses, but I had planned for it, like it was a class I wanted to purchase, or it was something I saved up for, I feel like that's different. So I want to see consistently how much money are we spending on our business. And bottom line, if it's expensive for you, it's expensive, right? Like there's a lot of things, booth rent, paying for insurance, making sure we're doing all of those things can kind of help you set your pricing based on, the services you offer and the value that you're bringing to your clients.
Should it be scary?
I don't think so. I really don't. I hope it's not scary, but I can understand if you aren't aware of your financial situation, asking somebody to pay you money is scary, right? So I feel like when we talk about tying ourselves to value, like the value of our service or the cost of our service, typically stems from not feeling valued in another area of our life. So again, going back to we as people are also business owners, you almost have to take a deeper look inside and say, do I value myself or do I feel valued in my career? So for me, the part of nails that I loved doing was connecting with people. Every single client that came into my chair, I was so excited to see them. I wanted them to tell me everything. I loved that connection. So that's where I felt valued, because I could tell that my clients loved it too, right? When they remembered my husband's name or I remembered their kids' names, it felt very personal versus transactional. So having the mindset of I created something with my own 2 hands and now somebody's going to pay me for that service versus, I'm sitting here talking with a friend and now I have to charge them for it. It feels really icky sometimes. So just those little mindset shifts can, I think, help relieve some stress, or if you feel scared towards pricing.
Yeah, having that confidence in what you are actually offering and believing that people really do want that service and are
Yeah.
willing to pay a premium price for it.
Absolutely.
So talking about having confidence in your value that you're offering, what kind of advice would you give to a struggling nail tech who doesn't feel very confident in what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I would say if you're not feeling confident in the actual skill that you're doing, maybe look at to where you can find that confidence. We mentioned we met at the retreat, and I think surrounding yourself with other nail techs in your community can be really uplifting if you let it, right? I'm a firm believer in the community over competition analogy, just because I think it's really important to surround yourself by people that will lift you up. You've probably heard the saying, like, never be the smartest person in the room, because you want to surround yourself with people that you can learn something from. So if it's a problem of the actual skill where you just feel like it's not clicking, put yourself out there, right? If there's an area you're lacking, there's probably somebody that has knowledge that could, give that to you, whether it's just a simple Instagram DM. I would say don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you look up to. You never know what, pathways it's going to forge. So I would say if that's the area you're struggling in, that would be my advice. But if it's more confidence that you're lacking as like making those business decisions or those financial decisions can be really difficult, again, I would say reach out, but also give yourself a little bit of grace, because I think as business owners, we do a lot, we're dealing with a lot, we're behind the chair all the time, and then we also have to like market ourselves and keep track of taxes, and like there's just a lot going on constantly. So I think sitting back and realizing how far you've come can really be monumental for you. And then if you're not confident in your financials, I would say you probably just don't know what's going on with them. Taking a closer look to what's happening. And then if you have deeper questions of like, why is this happening, or what am I doing wrong? I think seeking help or just taking a closer look at what's been going on over a span of a longer amount of time, right? If there's like a certain instance that happens, I think again, we have to leave that margin for error a little bit. But the analogy that I like to use for finances is it's like a bathtub, right? Like we have income, which is water flowing in, and unfortunately we have expenses. So like there's a drain at the bottom that's sometimes draining faster than other times. But we also want to have water left in the tub. So that water left is the wealth that we're building for our business, for ourselves. And sometimes it feels like it's taking a really long time to fill up the bathtub, right? And it gets really exhausting. So I think that can really dampen our confidence a little bit of like, well, I'm tracking my finances, but like the wealth is just not building. It's draining out as fast as it's coming in. Again, there's financial decisions that we can have, or, hard conversations that we can have with ourselves that can kind of get us into that confident mood, I would say. And then kind of, I guess, just like my biggest piece of financial advice, or like another way to look at it, especially if you're in the beginning, there's 4 things that you can do with your money. The first one is obviously buying expenses, buying the necessary things you need to keep your business afloat. The second one is paying yourself, which I think a lot of us skip out on, but you should value your employees, which is you. And so that's something big that I would recommend looking into. And then there's 2 other places or 2 other things you can do with your money. So the third one is what I like to call an emergency fund. So it's money that I actually like to transfer out of just like checking somewhere that I can't touch it, or, we could get into maybe like a money market account or something that's accruing a little bit more interest for those rainy days. So this again is kind of where that like PTO backup fund could come in. Over probably like a year and a half ago, I actually had to have back surgery. So like I couldn't do nails for a while, right? Super scary. That's my main source of income.
Yeah.
But because I had been using one of these strategies, I had a little bit of backup to where I could actually pay myself. It might not be a full scale paycheck, but it was still a little bit of like disability leave that I could pay myself. So that's the third one. And then the fourth one would be investing back in your business. So this is where you had mentioned like education, like how do you know when it's worth it? Personally, I think there's not an education class out there that you could take that you're not going to gain something from. I've actually been in situations where I've been in a class and I'm like, I should not be here. Like, this is not for me. I didn't feel great about what I was learning, but at the end of the day, I learned something from that experience and I don't regret spending the money on it, right? So those are kind of some tools, because the fact is that if you're not confident, maybe you just don't feel like you're actually doing something productive with your money, which I think can happen to a lot of us. So yeah, I guess kind of another analogy to wrap it up with your finances, think about it like if our money was a big jar of jelly beans, right? Like if you had to guess a jar of jelly beans, like you're really just guessing, like it's really hard to kind of see what's in there. It's a big old jar. You can't just like pick that up and take it everywhere with you. So I like to think of it as I want smaller jars with less jelly beans in each so that they're more accessible when I need to use them for an actual purpose. The strategy that I use and that I recommend to other people, whether it's personally or professionally, is that 100% of your jelly beans should have a place. So every single month, you're not just like leaving money for, oh, I'll just leave it there for now, or I think I have a little bit extra, I'm going to spend more. You're actually allocating that money into each account. So those 4 that I just talked about. So even if it's one little jelly bean in your emergency fund or $50, whatever it is, that's still contributing something to your future, which is over time going to build confidence in what you have going as a business owner.
Just like overall, my biggest takeaway so far from our conversation is just like being aware.
Totally.
Just being aware and being in control of the money that your business is making.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think maybe that is a little bit double-sided of like, well, I am aware that I don't have money, right? So if you do feel like you're aware, because I know there's people out there that are like really aware of their financial situation, it's taking also a deeper look of asking yourself those questions, setting financial goals. I have several formulas that I use to be like, just give you some clarity as to what's happening in your business.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest resources that you would recommend nail techs checking out today to make a difference in their finances?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple. So a book that I really like that helped with kind of my mindset shift, it's by Jen Sincero. She wrote You're a Badass, and then she also wrote You're a Badass at Making Money. And I love both of those because she had some really interesting concepts. And if you don't think you have a negative connotation or a negative way of thinking around finances, I would read her book because I realized that I actually was kind of holding resentment towards finances. And it's almost like I kind of let go of that perspective of what I thought making money looked like. And she also just talks about kind of how we're all capable of making the same amount of money. So that's a book that I really like. For nail tech specifically, you can check out my website. I have several resources on there, one of them being that financial spreadsheet. Again, it's a super inexpensive cost that you can write off at the end of the year that will just help you gain that clarity if you're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know, you're talking about tax categories. I don't even know what you're talking about. That's a really great one. And then personally, there's an app that I use. It's Dave Ramsey, which I know causes a lot of controversy, but his app is really great. It's called EveryDollar. And he does have a free version of it. But again, it's same with that jelly bean concept of every single dollar has a place at the end of the month, whether it's going to save for a specific thing or paying bills or investing, whatever it is, we want every dollar to be used in some capacity. So
amazing. And I'll just link all those in the description.
Sweet.
And everyone can have access to those. I am just so inspired by like your resilience and focus and everything you've been through, and you've done so many impressive, cool things, but landing here where you're just like leading the industry in business finances for nail techs is amazing.
Thank you.
You're always up to something new. Tell us what's coming next for you.
Yeah, I can give you a little teaser. I have a really fun business opportunity for nail techs coming this fall. It will be a kind of a several-day event with multiple educators, so that's all I can really tell you. But in the next month or so, that will be kind of rolling out with information. And I would say with that, like, use it as an opportunity, whether it's my courses or other educators, to really just immerse yourself in this community, because I've been fortunate to find an awesome side of this community where everyone's uplifting and powerful and they just are there for each other. That can also be something that will just build up your confidence, is reach out, find that community. So yeah, that's really exciting. That's coming in October. And then in September, I will be teaching a business and finance course at the Utah Nail Expo. So I'll be there. Come say hi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congrats. I love everything that you're doing. Thanks so much for being here. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, of course.
And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Beauty Connective podcast. If you loved it, be sure to follow, share it with a fellow beauty pro, or leave a review. And if you're ready to be discovered by more clients or just want to find your people in the industry, check out thebeautyconnective.com to learn more. Until next time, keep showing up and doing what you love.